Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
We're all in this together.
It's not fair to make savings on the backs of the same people again and again and again.
A report by two company bosses criticised the growing disparity between workers and directors' wages.
The differential between executive pay and the common man is simply too wide.
Does he realise why people are so angry?
This man has done more to divide this nation than anybody else.
We risk seeing a House of Commons which is stuffed full of low achievers who hate enterprise, hate people who look after their own family, and who know absolutely nothing about the outside world.
Martin, let's maybe start with you. You're a man who's generated wealth. How predictable we are. Do you think the gap between rich and poor is too big genuinely across society?
I think well, certainly inequality, how you define it, since Lehman, which was in 2008, has broadened, I think, largely because of cheap money and quantitative easing that has happened. But I think the fundamental question, which sort of gets to the heart of the question you asked at the beginning of the programme, is how that wealth or how that inequality has come about. You know, in my own case, we started the company, 31 years ago, with two people in one room. Virtually everything I own is ploughed back into the company. And I hold a stake. It's only 2% of the company, but in terms of value, with the company being worth £20 billion, it's quite substantial. But I've kept doing that.
OK. Emma, maybe I can bring in you. Is the gap between rich and poor too big? And if so, what can we do about it?
Well, we currently have an inequality balance that is as bad as it was since World War II. And if current trends continue, in 20 years, it's going to be as bad as it was in the Victorian era. And some people will say, well, what does it matter? There's always going to be rich people and there's always going to be poor people. But it matters because we live in a country that prides itself on having a fair society, and that if you're a nurse or a sailor or a CEO, that you can prosper through hard work and skill. And the problem with inequality is that it takes away opportunity from the people who are at the poorest end of the spectrum. And as to what you do about that, well, we were talking earlier, and the way you deal with that is in tax. And people say, well, there's trickle-down economics. But we're living in a society at the moment where our trickle-down economy is very rich people make a lot of money and trickle it into offshore accounts. So we're not seeing it. We're not seeing it. You know, we have Boots, but we have Boots who have avoided £1 billion in tax.
Martin, let's come back to you in a moment. Iain, I want to bring in you because you left the cabinet because you didn't think you were all in this together. That was your argument. You were moving away from the notion of one nation tourism. I mean, did you favour the cut in the top rate of tax? Do you think that David and George have actually done the right things when it comes to inequality?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that you need entrepreneurs, you need people to build businesses, you need people to take those risks, and by taking those risks they provide, you know, work and jobs for other people. So there is a whole structure about people driven to do more if the incentive is to make money for themselves, but in the course of that they provide jobs and work for people, and that's part of the balance. The thing I was concerned about, and I remain concerned, is, and I think that in all things, people don't mind people who take risks, get out there and make money, or if they start their business or whatever. I don't think people really object to that. I think they think that's reasonable. I think the concern is more shifted to what I call the kind of corporate process, where people who work their way through a system get in large salaries. And the city, again, is another area where, yeah, it's risk-taking, but where was the risk when the collapse came for lots of people? You know, lots of the banks didn't face some of those questions that they posed to companies. You know, when they were lending to companies, they said, if you take a bad decision, if you get into trouble, it's on your head and you'll lose this company. But when the banks went into trouble, I think a lot of people feel that the thing they lectured small businesses about actually wasn't the same for them.
And
they
the
got bailed out.
money in.
Government put more money in. So it's not that people dislike, I think, the idea of someone taking risks and getting rewarded. I think they think there should be rewards, but there should also be penalties. In other words, if you fail, then
you
should
felt
come
like
down.
you felt like. I mean, I may have got this wrong, but I feel like you're a bit sort of unleashed and angry now you're out of the cabinet on a number of subjects. Did you feel like you were constrained inside and you were in a place you didn't really want to be?
Look, when I left for a reason, which was over a period of time.
I'll take that as a yes.
Okay, well, over a period of time, I had felt at odds with a bit of the direction of travel. I had felt that we were bearing down too much in a very narrow group on those in the working age area of welfare, and I felt there was a kind of limit to this. I wanted more people to get back to work, and we've had tremendous success in getting them into work. There are more people in work now than ever before and things like that, and particularly from social housing, more people in work. So this is the key. But my concern was, progressively, bit by bit, what we were actually doing is making them bear the greatest burden of what was actually meant to be across the board sense that we had a deficit to reduce and we needed to spread that a bit wider. And my concern was we weren't spreading it wide enough, and that was my concern.
Ayesha, can I bring you in here? You talk to a lot of very wealthy people, and, you know, I mean, Martin's talked about being, you know, the gap between rich and poor being a difficulty and stuff needing to be done. There are lots of other wealthy people can see there's a problem. We talk about it often on panels like this. What do we do about it? What are the concrete policy measures? Where do we go if we decide, OK, we need to do something?
Well, look, I mean, everyone has talked about this tonight. I mean, when the wealth list comes out, the rich list, you sort of think, are we going to have a sort of rash of eat the rich? And I don't think we have that. I don't think we have that in our country. I mean, I'm not the only Indian person not on the rich list. If there was a sort of Indian overdrawn list...
There's still time, though,
you know, I'll be on the overdrawn list. So nobody begrudges someone like Martin, an amazing story, son of an immigrant, done really well for himself. Grandson of an immigrant, done really well for himself. But as Emma was saying, we want that fair chance for us, our kids and our grandkids. And I think the thing that is difficult is when people don't feel like we're all in it together. And I know Iain, you know, resigned because of the cuts to disability, but there have been other things that have been going on structurally for a long time in this country, like food banks, like the bedroom pat tax, and also take things...
But you had a tilt when you were advising the Labour leadership at doing something about it, and you didn't win. So what is a winnable strategy, a winnable policy that, you know, do you go back to the mansion tax? Do you put the top rate of tax back up? What do we do that begins to make it more equal? Because that's where everyone can agree there's a problem. It's finding a solution that's difficult.
Well, I think there's no quick fix to this. I think a lot of this inequality is intergenerational. I think it takes a long time to fix it. I think you have to look at the tax system again. I think you have to look at both taxing wealth that you create yourself and wealth that is gifted to you, and that is a thorny issue for politicians in terms of inheritance tax and all that kind of thing as well. I think you massively have to look at educational opportunities as well. We all know, take the example of Martin and other people have done well, education is the best chance to give children a best shot at doing well in life. Do we have a great educational system now? No, we don't. There's lots of inequalities. So I think you have to, if you are committed to really tackling this, you do have to look at it root and branch. And I'll just take one example, for example. The living wage has come in, and we all think that's a good thing. It built on the national minimum wage that the Labour government brought in. It's a good thing. We all want a minimum wage. But then when you have companies saying they're not going to pay their staff a lunch break because of the minimum wage, that doesn't seem like very fair, does it? It doesn't seem like we're all
had a very long discussion with
Also, though, on the minimum wage, the IFS said that by 2019, an average household will be better off because of the new living wage by £198, but will lose £754 in benefits. So this notion that suddenly people who were on in-work benefits are going to be vastly better off is nonsense.
Well, I just want to come back to Martin in a minute, but Iain, can I just ask you on that? What do you think of the living wage and this idea and the companies that are knocking back and the idea that people weren't going to be well off and better off in the way that
I have been in favour of increasing the living wage because the juxtaposition...
I saw you punching the air in the comments.
Because, you know, you're struggling with this. You have the government
one
pays...
hand, but taketh with the other.
Actually, I had two hands in the air. But the reality was that what you have is this tax credit system at the moment which actually subsidises low pay for companies by topping up their salaries. And so I thought that actually by raising the level of the salary, you're actually stopping people having their tax money taken from them to pay for others to be, to have low wages. So it seemed to make logical sense to me. It also, by the way, having been in business previously, seems to me that unless you actually pay people more, you don't make the effort to invest in them, to train them, and to get them more productive. And so you're getting companies to make more productive workforce, actually produces more for them, and it's a happier, more stable workforce. So I think it's actually a logical place to be. And the question about whether somebody is trying to find a way around it, that is absolutely wrong. That was not the whole purpose of it. It was about a net increase to their pay by having a rise in the minimum wage.
I just want to come to Martin at the end. Sure. Martin, you are you're a wealthy man. We all know that. You've done very well in business. You're surrounded by, you must mix with many other wealthy people, and it's clear that a lot of people think there is a bit of a problem, just not sure what to do about it. Do you think there's a problem, and is the solution tax in your view? More tax?
I think the taxation system does achieve that. Obviously, the system is tightening up. I mean, governments generally are short on revenues, short on tax yields, and therefore they are looking for ways of improving tax yields. And what you're seeing is a tightening up of the system. Now, when we look at tax charges, corporate tax charges in the future, we're thinking that corporate taxes are going to rise quite significantly, actually, in terms of corporate taxation because of the tightening up of all the loopholes, which are legal loopholes. What has happened is because people pushed the envelope too far, that the system now is being changed.
I've been getting away with it all my